Amen.
Amen. Rabbi, can you say a prayer for us, please?
You're going to need to unmute yourself, I think, Rabbi. There you go.
Help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty that he should bestow upon me his truth, his wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying his message, and so doing, sanctify his name, and bring, with inshallah, with God's help, the peace to the world. And it's first, I hope that the hearts should be open around the world, because we are struggling with the powers of evil that constantly attempts that the voice of this truth should not be heard, or should be ridiculed, and therefore God should open the hearts of everybody to let the truth come into their hearts, and God should help that we should be successful in doing this, and that will bring, with God's help, what they call shalom, peace around the world. I really hope that this opportunity, this awesome meeting, will be something that should be a catalyst for this, to start this process of peace, and God help, inshallah, that God will bring it to a completion, that we should have a peaceful, once again, a fusion of us all living together, Jews, non-Jews, the Arab populace. We should be able to live together in peace, and likewise around the world live in peace. And this opportunity, of course, it's always a privilege that I can meet again the Reverend Hagler and everybody else here. Reverend Hagler, as he said, we are friends from a long while. We are together. We try to do God's will and stand up for the rights of God's creation, for the Palestinian people, and for the Jewish people. This is something, it's not exclusive for the Palestinians. This is for the Jewish people, Jewish Palestinians, and Jews around the world, and the humanity around the world. So God should help. We should be successful in this. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so we're going to, and thank you for those beautiful, wonderful prayers. We're going to, I'm just going to briefly go over the outline of today's program. We're going to, well, first, before I go on, we're in the chat section. We have information for donations to help us to continue to do, as the Rabbi and Reverend Hagler said, to do God's work. So that information will be in the chat. So what we would do, we would introduce our guests with their bios, and then from there we would have a video that we would play, 2 videos in fact, and after that, then our speakers will speak on their position on the Israeli-Palestinian issues, and we will, that time is allotted for 10 minutes each. And then we will continue with our program, and we will have another video at the end of the presentations, and then we will open up for questions, a Q&A session. So we will, at this time, I would turn it over to Robert, and we will introduce our guests and with their bios.
Thank you, Abdus. Our first guest is someone who is well known, Reverend Scott Hagler began his career as an activist fighting to hold the forces of corporate America accountable for the social, economic impacts of their actions. For 3 decades, he has been a powerful voice for the disenfranchised Blacks and Latino communities fighting irresponsible or racial corporate decisions which exploits those communities. In 1993, Reverend Hagler brought his social political awareness from Boston to Washington, D.C., where he now works in the Fort Totten, which he describes as a community ripe for exploitation and withdrawal of capital. As senior pastor of Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ, he has been instrumental in helping his neighborhood control which businesses are allowed to operate. Our other esteemed guest is Yisrael Dahi West. He is a Haredi Jew activist and a spokesman for the minority branch of the Net Naru Kata, a Haredi anti-Zionist group residing in Mose, New York. He believes that Jews should peacefully oppose the existence of the Israeli state. Quote, "It would be forbidden for us to have a state, even if it would be in a land that is desolated or uninhabited," unquote. He represents fewer than 500 people of the Netanyahu Kata extreme views, created from 100 years ago, rejected by a vast majority of the Orthodox Jews worldwide. And I think, Brother Abdus, you're going to play a video now?
Yes, we're going to play this first video, which is called "What Right Did Britain Have to Give Anyone Palestine?"
Excuse me for just one second. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know where you got that bio, but that's really a false bio, totally false. I really apologize. I'd have to say that, but it's all it's a Zionist slant on who we are. One thing is true: we oppose the state of Israel. That's totally true. But that we're extreme minority, that we're only 500 people. That is so off the wall. It's like saying when the Republicans win that the Democrats are only a few thousand people, or when Democrats will say the Republicans. I mean, it's just totally, false. And I'll explain later. But it's really, I apologize, but that bio was taken off. I don't know from where.
Well,
and you know that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm going to say thank you, because that's what, it's kind of like the reason why we're here. Because, there's, we get false information here and there, and we need to be in solidarity and be on the same page. I'm glad that, I'm glad that you corrected me, and I'm here to learn, and I'm here to grow. So I welcome to hear your word and your truth.
And yes, and Rabbi, thank you for that correction. And we will also allow. We would definitely allow time during this program for you to give, the correct bio and whatever information that is relevant to your positions and the positions of your organization. So, so we're going to play this video. What right did Britain have to give anyone Palestine?
What right did Britain have to grant you somebody else's country?
We lost 6 million people.
But what right did Britain have to grant you somebody else's country?
The Jews have been persecuted, obviously, from the Holocaust, and we were granted Israel as a result of this.
Granted by whom?
Wohin sollen wir gehen? Wo sollen wir leben?
Is the sheep preaching hate when he says, I'm not going to let the wolf eat me anymore? If the wolf comes in here, next time he comes in here, I'll do whatever I have to do to keep him off my back. Is the sheep violent or is the wolf the violent one? He wasn't teaching hate, he was teaching common sense. Somebody's knocking you over the head, stop him. Do whatever you have to do to stop him.
All I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
We do not mean that Israel has the right to retake the territories they conquered from the Arab world, like the Gaza Strip, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank. We don't agree with that. Those territories should be returned to the Arab people.
Wem gehört das hier? Ist das euer Land?
Ja, es gehört uns. Es ist mein Land. 15 meiner Kinder sind hier geboren. 15 Söhne und Töchter. Und alles, was Gott ihnen gegeben hat, sind diese Olivenbäume. Und ihr habt beschlossen, sie zu verbrennen.
Some things in life they just don't wanna see.
We've all gone mad. All night they cry, the babies, the women, all of them. We can't deal with this horrible situation anymore.
Well, I mean, when you look at that, even though it was a 4-minute video, you see the problems that we have over there. There's a lot of us who don't know the history, and so we have another video that we would like to introduce, which is just a brief 5-minute history of where we are today, how we got to where we are today in Palestine.
What would happen if you built a refuge for a persecuted people in a place where another people already lived? In the next few minutes, you'll learn why this moral quandary is at the root of the struggle between Israelis and Palestinians. First, there are a couple of things it's helpful to understand. One, many Jews fled harsh persecution in anti-Semitic Europe, especially the Nazi Holocaust. Zionists encouraged massive immigration to historic Palestine, at that time a British colony, where Jews had an age-old connection and where small Jewish communities had long existed among larger groups of indigenous peoples. But when the UN offered the Jewish immigrants the majority of the land for a new state called Israel, for the indigenous Palestinians who lived there, it was a massive destruction of life. They rejected the UN's partition plan, and several Arab states invaded the new state of Israel. Israeli forces essentially erased over 400 Palestinian villages and towns. By the end of the fighting, Israel controlled 78% of historic Palestine. And when 750,000 Palestinians who fled or were expelled during fighting tried to return to their homes where the new state now stood, they were permanently barred by the Israeli government. While over 100,000 of their relatives and neighbors who hadn't left became second-class citizens of the new state, along with the new Jewish majority. Today, Palestinian refugees and their descendants number in the millions. Most are in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and Jordan. Many are spread throughout the world, with millions still living in refugee camps, seeking to return to their homeland. To sum up, one group of refugees found a much-needed home. But in the process, a new group of refugees was created. Here's the second thing to understand. Israel was founded as a Jewish state. But now ask yourself, what exactly does that mean? People had lots of ideas about what a Jewish state should look like. Some called for equality for all citizens. But what was created in practice, was institutional discrimination against non-Jews. In other words, Israel ended up being built on a blueprint of exclusion. The Israeli government wants maximum land and resources for Jews, but not the Palestinians living there. That's why, inside Israel, Jews get special privileges, including rights to land and housing, that are denied to the Palestinian citizens, who make up 20% of Israel's population. That's also part of why Israel has never defined its borders. In fact, they still hold on to land, the West Bank and Gaza, that they conquered in the war in 1967. Since then, Israel has built Jewish settlements throughout the occupied West Bank, building Jewish-only cities and supplying them with infrastructure like roads and army camps, schools, and even a college. Military occupations are meant to be temporary, but after 40-plus years, this one looks permanent and entirely unjust. In the West Bank, Israeli Jewish settlers and Palestinians live on the same land, but must live under two completely separate and unequal systems of Israeli law. The Jewish settlers dominate the natural resources, including water and agricultural land, and they're backed by the Israeli army. To maintain the occupation, Israel has demolished thousands of Palestinian homes and orchards, confiscated Palestinian land, bombed a captive civilian population in Gaza, and punished resistance with raids, arrests, and assassinations, all to gain maximum land, while making life so difficult for Palestinians that they will either leave or be too afraid to resist. Palestinians have fought back. For decades, they tried to achieve national liberation through armed struggle. Some groups still do. But the majority now support popular protest instead. The deeply harmful pattern of control, repression, and violence profoundly harms Palestinians living under occupation and Israelis living as occupiers. This must be broken to reach a peaceful and secure future for both peoples. Now that you understand the problem, what about the solution? What about peace talks? So far, over 2 decades of U.S.-backed peace talks have actually made things worse by helping Israel continue the occupation. It's been years of talking while Israel massively expanded the Jewish settlements and literally redrew the map. Peace talks are good if they're real, but not when they're theater to cover a land grab. So now what? The current world superpower, the United States, has been a terrible friend, enabling Israel's destructive and self-destructive expansion onto Palestinian land by funding the Israeli military, the biggest recipient of U.S. foreign aid in the world. But there's another superpower that can make the difference: you. There's a movement with hundreds of thousands of people just like you across the world, including Palestinians and Israelis, protesting, educating, divesting, and boycotting, all to bring nonviolent international pressure on Israel to stop violating human rights of Palestinians.
Well, as you see, so this, I mean, it's a very, very complicated history. And as we have seen from the video, one that is definitely based on the might make right ideology. So we're going to introduce our speakers at this time. We're going to start with Reverend Hagler, and we're going to ask our speakers to give us a 10-minute presentation or discussion of their position of what we just seen so far.
Well, good evening, everybody. And again, I thank everybody for being here, and I'm again honored to be in the presence of Rabbi Weiss. And you know, one of the things that I'm say this, and he can clarify that later, but in an article in the New York Times when one of the rabbis passed, it talked about this movement not being the fastest growing movement in Hasidism. And so, you know, it was one of those messages that's opposite of the messages that are put out there by the Zionists to try to discredit a voice. And so I'm one that understands somewhat Rabbi Weiss's and the movement's position. And one thing I can clearly say also, his position is theological. And I also appreciate that theological position as well as that historical position. And so again, you know, it's not that it is the movement is fringe or the movement is an extreme movement. In fact, the movement is a serious thinking one that theologically takes seriously its understanding of the faith and the faith walk. He can explain that better later on, but I just wanted to say that. And that's one reason why I've always appreciated just standing in the presence with him and the rest of the brothers. That's always been something that's been important for me. Yesterday, I preached on the subject of out of John. And one of the things that was clear out of the Gospel of John is that the forces wanted to wipe out everything that Jesus had done so that they could claim that Jesus did not exist. And I'm saying that because that's a form of liberation theology when you look at a subject such as this and you extend it into what we're talking about tonight. Because the destruction of land, the destruction of history, the altering of history, the removal of olive trees, the disappearance of villages is to make the statement that people do not exist, that history do not exist, that there is no valid presence or history of a people on the land, which is not true. But of course, you can create a narrative if you remove the evidence of a person's existence. And that has been what people who have been oppressed all over the world have been struggling against, is to keep the forces that are in power from removing any credible evidence that you exist, that you have a history, that you have a purpose, that you have a meaning. And so that's what we discovered particularly in Palestine. You discovered that in the struggle of South Africa. You discover that struggle wherever there are oppressed people, because somebody else attempts to control the narrative of what is. What was telling for me was a while back, but a few years ago, I took a group of Black clergy to Palestine so that they could see for themselves. And I made the point of not giving them any briefing material because I didn't want them to be skewed one way or the other in terms of what their expectations was. And I deliberately chose some folks who I knew were Christian Zionists to go on that trip with me. Those who were in support of the state of Israel and felt that basically Israel had to exist and be sovereign in order for the second coming of Christ. Y'all may know the theology of Christian Zionism. What was interesting was what happened. Within 48 hours, I began to have a theological crisis that existed among my Christian Zionists. And that was because most of them were from the Deep South. And what they saw reminded them of Jim Crow, reminded them of the separate water fountains, reminded them of the times in which their parents had to step off the sidewalk whenever somebody white passed by. And all of a sudden they began to question, what was this? This is not chosenness. This is not something that is special. This is something that is truly a hypocritical and racist manifestation of a state. And so that's what eyes began to see that came out of a Black community, most of the people out of the South, and therefore they had some inkling of what they had left behind in Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi and all those other places. And here they were in Palestine, basically filled with the narrative of the myth of the existence of Israel. And see, what happens in the churches is people very seldom make a distinction between biblical Israel and where we are right now in terms of modern day Israel. Biblical Israel was conquered, was occupied. And some folks would say was taken over because they did not practice Torah. And basically God had placed an indictment against folks in the land. But what we're really seeing is a struggle between indigenous people and those who want to be occupiers, and I would say this, those who want to basically carry forth the ideals and the programs of Western imperialism. and establish a beachhead in the Near East. And that's not outlandish, because we saw it with the continent of Africa. We saw it in Lebanon. We see it in Israel, Palestine. We see all, and basically it is those that represent Western values. And how do you represent Western values? Basically, you represent Western values by putting people down or removing people from their land and colonializing people and colonializing history, capturing the narrative and making the narrative something that really is ahistorical and does not really exist or pan out in terms of history. And that's a part of what we have been dealing with, a very, very different kind of place. Now, one thing that is clear, and I will say this, is that anytime you claim to have a Christian country, or a Muslim country, or a Jewish country, you have automatically stated that anybody who's not of any of those faiths do not belong. And that is a problem. I would be one, and I think members of my church know me enough that I would be one that would stand up against anybody trying to make something so-called Christian country. Because that means that then my fellow pilgrims coming from other faiths are not welcomed. And I refuse that. And so one of the things is that you begin to get narrow and narrow and narrow. And of course, there's people in the United States of America that want to assert that this country is a Christian country. But it's a particular type of Christianity that has endorsed slavery. It's a Christianity that continues to endorse misogyny. It's a Christianity that continues to support white idolatry. And so again, whenever somebody talks about I'm a Christian country or a Christian this, or whose Christianity are we talking about? And what does that really mean politically, ethically? And what does that really mean in terms of the existence and liberation or freedom of anybody? And so we come to this situation here in Israel and Palestine. And one of the things that I urge, particularly folks, if you believe, if you want to stand up against racism, you have to stand up against Zionism. If you stand up against white idolatry, you have to stand up against Zionism. That is really manifest as a white idolatry right now in that part of the world. And clearly we have to begin to talk about what does a real society look like, since you can't go backwards in time. What does it look like? How do you begin to manifest equality? And how do you begin to create a context and a place where people can actually dwell as full citizens with all of the rights of citizenship, equality, and human rights? I'm going to end right there, and we can take it from there. Thank you so much, Brother Luqman.
Thank you, Reverend Hagler. Before we go on to Rabbi Weiss, I would just like everyone who is in attendance to know that we are recording this. So if you didn't catch the very beginning of this program, it is being recorded, and so we will provide all the necessary information on that. So thank you, Reverend Hagler. And so we will. So now, Rabbi Weiss, is your presentation, please?
Yeah. Again, with the help of the Almighty, I pray that He should bestow upon me His truth and wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message. As you've mentioned, my name is Rabbi Yisrael David Weiss. Ironically, Israel has stolen my name, Yisrael. Yisrael is actually Jacob in the Torah, Yaakov, and his other name was Yisrael. And that's how the name came to us. The children of Israel means the children of Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's really 10 minutes is very hard to do justice to the subject, but with God's help, we'll try to just shed a little light, open a little window that it should give the people the opportunity and to open their eyes, that they should look into this issue clearly. And I'm really humbled by Reverend Hagler's words, and very thankful for your kind words. And again, the time is short, so I can't delve into many of the issues that you mentioned. But I'd just like to say, like you said, you took people to see what's happening in Palestine on the ground, and in that manner, you obviously, you just wanted to give them the opportunity to use their truth that's in them to look for what's the truth. And that's what we want to do. The Judaism is a religion of 3,000 years. When Jews went on Mount Sinai, they took the Torah. God gave them the Torah, which is it is a covenant. It is a bond that we made with the Almighty, that we should be subservient to God. It makes us totally subservient to God. We are to follow, and we accept it upon ourselves to accept all the words of the Torah, to follow it truthfully and totally. Zionism is a movement that started a mere 100-odd years ago, and it is a totally materialistic political movement of having an own entity, a land, and all the strappings of a nation, of a movement, of a political movement. It is totally really the contradictory and the diametric opposite of what religion is. Religion is subservient to God, to do the will of the Almighty. This, as a nation, as a political movement, they are maybe will allow whatever it seems fitting for their movement. So they may allow religion when they decide they want to allow certain religions, or how much amount of the religion they will allow. Whatever is politically convenient, that's what they're out to do. But in other words, they may give permission. I don't like to use that word, to God to have a place in their entity, but if not, it's not guaranteed that he has a place. And as you will see, with God's help, in what I will try to present, you'll see that they definitely don't give God full command and a place in their society. Judaism, being subservient to God, commands us that we had to follow the laws of the Torah, and God commanded us at that time that we should go up to the Holy Land and live there. And it allowed for people who were able to stay in that land if they did not worship idol worshipry. They were able to remain in that land. We were warned by the prophets, and everybody who studies the words of the prophets will see that the Jews were explicitly told, as Reverend Hagler spoke about, that we were warned by the prophets that if we're not on the special level of holiness that is required, the land will reject us because it is a holy land. We will be dispersed amongst the nations. This happened 2,000 years ago. Again, the covenant was around 3,000 years ago. Around 2,000 years ago, there was the destruction of the temple that God commanded us to build, which the King Solomon built to serve God in the temple. Once we were sent into exile, we were under oath, 3 oaths of God, that we should not return in mass as a nation. We were dispersed amongst the God as a godly command, not because of our physical weakness, not because we were lacking militarily. When we were following the will of God, we had many miracles. The walls of Jericho sunk into the ground, and that's how we entered the land. And this is not for now. I'm just giving you the overview of how the workings of the Jewish people worked. It was totally following the will of God with the hand of God involved. Once we were not up to par, so the Almighty brought the nations to come into the land to attack the land of Israel, and the Jews were dispersed. And the prophet spoke and said, "Nothing will help. They can't fight this. They can't resist this." We were dispersed amongst the nations, and we were put in the 3 oaths: 1, not to return en masse as a nation. Secondly, we should not rebel against any nation. We have to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. And thirdly, not to make any attempt to end this exile. It is the godly will. We do believe that one day the Almighty, with his compassion, will end exile, which means he will reveal his spirit throughout the world. All the nations will come together and join and serve God. Not they will become Jews, they will all serve God together, and God himself will rebuild the temple. It will be the will of all humanity. This is what will happen eventually. But till that day comes, we are forbidden on the stringent oath of God to try to reestablish a Jewish sovereignty. It is expressly forbidden as one of the most serious breaches of godly command if we do attempt to do this. It's like it's brought down that there's three things that we have to give our lives for: not to worship, idol, not to kill, and not to commit adultery. And this goes into one of these commands. That's what we were told. And therefore, for 2,000 years, we went through the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades. We went through many, many sufferings. I mean, terrible suffering. And all our rabbis in their writings told the Jewish people, as leaders of the Jewish religion, as the leaders of the Jewish people, because that's what Judaism is, a religion, that do not attempt to establish your own sovereignty. Because sometimes Jews, when they suffered so much, they asked the rabbis, maybe we should try to buy a piece of land, and we should be we should protect ourselves. And the rabbi said, no, this is forbidden, not only in the Holy Land, but we are forbidden to establish any type of Jewish sovereignty. And as I've mentioned, returning in mass into the Holy Land is another oath that we're not to do. We're not allowed to have a Jewish sovereignty, even 1 inch of Jewish sovereignty anywhere, and certainly not by going up to the Holy Land and trying to create our Jewish sovereignty. This is the basics of Judaism. Every Jew, in fact, now is coming Passover this week. We say the coming year in Jerusalem, which we've been saying for thousands of years. The Zionists abuse this statement, which every Jewish child who's from a religious family would tell you. It doesn't mean we should go up to Jerusalem, because then any child for these hundreds of years would ask their parents. Last year said go up to Jerusalem. You couldn't buy a ticket. You couldn't buy a place on a ship and go up. What's with you? Every year you tell us they're coming here, because going up to Jerusalem had a totally other meaning. It doesn't mean physically we should pick ourselves up and go up to Jerusalem. It means that God should reveal his glory, take us back, and we should be close to God. It means the closeness to God. That's what Jewish religion is about. Therefore, when Zionism came and started this movement, this political movement of stating that they want to reestablish a land, all the rabbinical authorities universally stood up and said, this is heresy, this is a rebellion against God. You will find that we put out a book called The Rabbis Speak Out. It is a compilation of a 130-year record, today it would be more already, of religious Jewish opposition to Zionism, from right at the beginning till today. And all the rabbinical authorities universally, but it has to be somebody who knows the rabbinical authorities from Europe, from Palestine, will recognize these names as the leaders of Judaism, unrefutably the leaders. Here I open to this page, Rabbi Yisrael Meir HaKohen. He was one of the greatest leaders in Europe. He was called the Chafetz Chaim. He lived from 1839 to 1933. 1839, that's way before the establishment of the state, to 1933. And he was a codifier of Jewish law. Everybody lives and breathes by his books in the religious community. He's a codifier of the Jewish law. He said, and I'm quoting him, the Zionists are dead limbs of our people, which causes the entire body to rot. In other words, it's affecting the whole Jewish people like gangrene. It's causing the entire the Jewish people. They should, God forbid, rot if they'll accept this movement. The Zionists, the show, actually the video that you've shown talks about the terrible atrocities, the horrific, inhumane treatment of the Palestinian people. I again, being that the time is so limited, I don't want to. It tears at our heart, and it's something that we've been crying about and suffering and humiliated and frustrated about what's been done to the Palestinian people from the beginning of its existence. But again, I don't want to delve into this part of it, because this is what everybody can see and everybody knows. The question is, what is the cause of this? I want to talk about that the Zionists try to shield themselves, to try to put on a facade that they're doing it in the name of religion. I'm here to reveal, to uncover, and tell you that this is a vile and pernicious. It's a terrible crime, using the Jewish religion to protect themselves, to shield themselves from the eyes of the world. When Zionism started, as I said, all the rabbinical authorities stood up and said, we cannot accept this, we oppose it. when the Zionists, because as I said, we're not allowed to establish our own entity. We're not allowed to kill or steal. We're not allowed to in any way rebel against God by they're breaching all the laws of the Torah. It's not a religious movement. When you look at the beginning of their establishment, this is the first Zionist by the Congress. It's a very well-known picture. It's hard to show here, but if you look it up, you will see that the whole head table, these are not, when you talk about a religion, you talk about religious leaders, most probably of Judaism, right? Or if you speak about Christianity, you'd speak about Islam, you would see sitting there the heads of Islam, the Ayatollahs, the Imams. Here you can see what a farce this is. These were the heads of Zionism. You won't find, not one of them have a head covering, which is a Jewish command. In other words, it is a total, it is a total redefine what Judaism, a definition of what Judaism is. It is from religion into nationalism, and it is expressly forbidden, as I said. The Jewish people, not only did they not accept this, but they stood up right away in Palestine. And in the 1920s, the chief rabbi of Palestine. Now you have to understand, we have rabbis, we had a community living there, a Jewish community. The largest community was the Muslim community. Then there was the Christian community, and the smaller of the three communities was the Jewish community. They were much smaller than the Muslim community. Now the head of the community were there was the Ashkenaz and Sephardic heads. The heads of the Ashkenaz community was Rabbi Sonnenfeld, and he was really the head was called the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, which meant of Palestine. Rabbi Sonnenfeld, of blessed memory, met with the king of Transjordan. This is in the 1920s when Zionism started coming up from Europe. They started coming at the end of the 19th century, and he saw that it's what a danger this is. He met with the king of Transjordan. And he told that, and there's much writings from him. Again, you can go to our site NKUSA, and he said they have nothing to do with us. We refuse to accept what they're doing, what the Zionists are doing. It is an aberration from Judaism. It's not Judaism. They do not represent the Jewish religion or the Jewish people, definitely not the Jewish people that are living in Palestine. Almost entirely, the whole populace of Jews who were living in Palestine were God-fearing Jews who kept the Sabbath, not like today. They were people who were God-fearing, accept the covenant of God, and they refused to have this ersatz Judaism, which is nationalism, which means to establish our state. In fact, when the United Nations finally decided in 1948, where they ratified the Zionist state of Israel, at that time Rabbi Sonnenfeld of blessed memory passed away, and there was I have to state that the Zionists say they have a rabbinate and a chief rabbi. It's a farce. There was a rabbinate and there was a chief rabbi from the religious community, from the community that existed in Palestine. Now, this rabbinate exists till today. There is the Eida Haredis, the God-fearing community, and there's a chief rabbi. At that time, it was Rabbi Sonnenfeld. Rabbi Sonnenfeld passed away. The next one was Rabbi Dushinsky. In 1948, they established the state. The chief rabbi at the time, Rabbi Dushinsky, of blessed memory, had a delegation going to the representation of the United Nations. And this is the picture. It's in the United Nations records. You can see it for yourself. And this is what he stated. We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. It's in the United Nations records. Again, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. Since that day until today, Jews refuse to serve in their army. In the bio, that false bio of Zionists stated that there's 500 people. There's the vast majority, Jews around the world who are true to the religion, they refuse to accept this definition of Judaism as Zionism. When the rabbi passed away in 202, the last chief, and they took up the last chief rabbi, hundreds of thousands of Jews, you can look this up, they went out into the streets. These are anti-Zionist Jews. This is not 500 people. This is over 100,000 people stood there accepting a chief rabbi who's the opposition of the Zionist state and their rabbinate. This is what's existing there. They're on the streets every single year, demonstrating, getting brutally beaten by the Zionists. We have hundreds and thousands of pictures. You can look it up. The Zionists have these records also, where Jews are brutally beaten on the streets. Old men, young men, children. It's horrific to see. They murder, they assassinate our rabbis. Young children are dragged and beaten and arrested. Yeah, old men and young men, girls and boys. It's an ongoing phenomenon. They have, being that they have a law that a person has to serve in their army, in the IDF. Whoever turns 17, I think it is, that the boys and girls have to serve in the IDF. We refuse. That rather we would die than serve in the IDF. So you have boys and girls. They force them to put on the army uniforms in prison. You have boys and girls who are arrested. Here you see a girl praying and crying because she was arrested because she refused to serve in their army. They brutally beat us and oppress us as they do to the Palestinian people. Of course, they do it under the cover of darkness a little bit because it shouldn't be scandalous. But that is what they're doing to the Jewish people. I can go on and on how they try to break the backbone of the Jewish community. Not 500 people, but hundreds of thousands of Jews who are living in occupied Palestine. They all stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. As we in the United States, we have demonstrations. This is in Jerusalem, but we have here. This is in front of the White House. We have, when Netanyahu came to visit, we have tens of thousands who are going there. Tens of thousands. If you will come to New York, where I'm living, the largest concentration of religious community is right here in Williamsburg, right across from Manhattan. You will see that there's not one single Israeli flag. If this would be such an important issue to Judaism, there would be somebody who has an Israeli flag. There's not one single Israeli flag. They are all opposed to this concept of Zionism. Not everybody is ready to go out and be murdered or beaten or harassed or threatened as we are. We get beaten because we demonstrate. And even here in the United States, if it wouldn't be for police protection, the Zionists would kill us. And they tell us that, and they attempt to do that. So when we go out, many people see what happens here in London. Rabbis are attacked, and or else wherever it is throughout the diaspora. So people are fearful to be outspoken. But the community, whoever is true to the Jewish religion, invariably they oppose the Zionism, because Zionism is totally incongruous. It is the antithesis of what Judaism is, and it's the facts on the ground. If a person will take the time and the effort, they will see that in Jerusalem, in Mea Shearim, the most religious of Jewish communities, there's even Palestinian flags flying there. And they and you come to New York, or you go to London, or you go to wherever there's a concentration of religious Jews, Montreal, or you go to Melbourne, Australia, wherever you find these pockets of very religious communities, the more the religious, the more anti-Zionist they are. Neture Karta, by the way, which is the name of our organization, means Neture Protectors Karta of the city. It was given to the ones who are vocal against Zionism. We are not a card-carrying organization. We are only the ones who, just like if somebody will try to separate Sabbath, one of the 10 commandments, from the other 10 commandments, it's trying to, Neture Karta just is the voice of the ones who would dare to be outspoken against Zionism. It's not a part of our religion like a separate group. It is the ones from these all these communities, whether it is in Al-Quds in Jerusalem or in New York. It is the voice, the ones who are vocal against Zionism. We are the outspoken people, Neture Karta, protectors of the city, against this Nakba, against this tragedy, this movement, this evil movement of Zionism that is rebelling against God by oppressing the Palestinian people. The Torah, again, clearly states we are not to steal, we are not to kill. What's happening to the Palestinian people, I will end with this. The Palestinian people, as the other Muslim people around the world, when the Jews were being harassed, were being oppressed in Europe, the Jews were embraced and they were taken into all the Muslim and Arab lands, and the Jews flourished there and put out our greatest rabbis, including in Palestine. So it is another tragedy, because to vilify the Palestinian people and say that they're anti-Semites, which is also a false word, of course, but to say they're anti-Jewish, or to state that it's a religious conflict between Muslims and Jews, this is just part of this false narrative of Zionism that confuses people. We lived together with the Muslims, we flourished together, we lived in harmony and peace throughout the years. We have many pictures to show how Jews lived. There was no human rights groups, it was never necessary. This is in the streets of Palestine. We've always lived together. This is not a religious conflict. It's a Zionist portrayal. We lived in peace and we hurt. Now the Muslims are being vilified, that the Palestinians are being vilified. It's unacceptable. It's anti-Jewish, and the Zionist state is the anti-Semites at its core, because not only are they making a rift between God's creation, the Palestinian, the Muslim people and Jews, and they're oppressing the Palestinian people and the Jewish people, but they're also they are creating the repercussions around the world of hate and war and all what's happening, and people are unfortunately vilifying Palestinian people. We cannot accept it. God is compassionate. It will come to an end, because this is a false and evil criminal concept, this occupation. It will end. We pray to God it should end speedily and peacefully. We hope that maybe from this meeting, somebody will wake up, and we will try, and there will be a movement to correct this terrible crime that's been for the last 70 odd years.
Well, thank you for that presentation, Rabbi Weiss. Very informative, and oh wow, I mean, just so much to learn there. I believe we have our other guest, Imam Abu Nidian, and I will turn this over to the moderator, Robert.
Yes, I was just thinking. I think you did it in 10 minutes. No.
I apologize for that.
No, it's fine.
But no, it was fine. It was fine because I enjoyed every minute of listening to you.
Yes.
I understand your friendship with Reverend Hagler, because I can see you two in a room and just the passion between the two of you. Yeah. So, but we do have one more speaker that came on board. Abdus and Jacquie is the Imam of the Manassas monk in suburban Washington. He's a longtime advocate for peace and justice. He's one of the ambassadors for promoting interfaith cooperation and dialogue. He was part of our Lenten series a couple of weeks ago and gave a very passionate sermon that stuck with me. And so I'm really glad. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, this is just great, just to hear these passionate speakers and get this information, and I'm looking forward. So there you go.
God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Of course, after hearing deep friendship every time that we see each other on a Quds day, and we really have a common ground with each other. Well, he knows it, that the Muslims, actually the Holy Quran calls Moses as Kalimullah, the spokesman of Allah. How could our Quran say something that it is the spokesman of God, then he says something that is wrong? Is impossible. But what they do, they change the word of God from the Judaism to a Zionism, and then they will create all kinds of problems. Actually, as Rabbi Weiss mentioned, of course, all of the ideas that we had, when we're talking about Zionism, it is not at all Judaism. Moses never agrees with them. Well, why do you call yourself Jews? Why don't you call yourself criminals? Therefore, based on that, as we, of course, have many of the representative of the Judaism is in the Majlis of Iran. They are talking to each other, and their friendship, this friendship has been for many years. Until 70 some years ago, this Nekba, this Zionism was established. Where? with the name of Holocaust that they went to the Palestine. Question from you is, did Holocaust take place in Palestine? Why should these people pay for it? Why should they become the one that they are under such a huge agonies and huge jail that you have created for them? So this is something that we have to go ahead and really think. The same idea that, of course, we say international conspiracy, they create ISIS or so-called Islamic State with the name of Islam, or with the same idea that they created actually the Crusaders with the name of Christianity. They are creating Zionists with the name of Judaism. Neither ISIS is Muslim, nor Crusaders were Christian, nor Zionists actually is a Judaism. Judaism is follower of Judah, of Moses. Moses was confronted with Pharaoh. Zionist becomes a Pharaoh representative on earth. Everything is mine. And I have to be the one to be your leaders. This is what they're promoting. Land, leadership, and the wealth of the world belong to us as chosen people of God. Of course, that is not the idea of, when the time comes that hopefully we will be lived at the same time that we have lived in peace and harmony. In our country, Judaism, actually the Jews have in the bazaar of Iran, if you have, I'm giving you this a little bit example. The bazaar of Iran is closed on Saturday for the Jewish Sabbath day. And it's closed on Sunday because of the Christianity. And it's closed on Friday. Usually they go to work 4 days and they are prosperous and they will live with each other and they have a lot of common with each other. As we say in our Quran, there is no dispute and differences between the messengers. You create the dispute with their name. You create Zionism with the name of Judaism. You come to such a huge crime against the Palestinian with the name of Jews have to have a land. Jews have a land. Moses have the land. It belongs to them, but not the way that you are pretending. You're bringing out for the poor Palestinian that they are doing that. Therefore, I would say continuously this plot that they are and the scheme that they are doing, it will be defeated anyway. And no doubt, the united humanity, that they know it, that the land belongs to the whole humanity. You can't say this is my land. The humanity are the part of each other. How could I say that not you but me? Not you but me. Whatever that we have is from each other. The land that it is from east to the west belongs to Almighty God. He says, live together in peace and harmony. Whatever that you have, I share it with you. Whatever we have, you share it with. So this is how the humanity exists. We belong to each other. There's no such a thing as a man, a human says, I. Within each and each one of individual of us, there is a whole universe that is involved. The land, I am not the tailor, I have a jacket. I'm not the mechanic, I have a car. I'm not the architect, I have the houses, I have all of the elements that I have is because of the others. The moment that you say me, but not you, you're losing we. You're losing the humanity. And of course, as you probably know, the Zionist flag, most of you know, of course, Rabbi Weiss knows for sure. There's the flag that it is from two blue actually lines in this side of the flag and the Star of David in the middle of it. From Nile to Euphrates belongs to us. Well, where is the Nile to Euphrates? All the Middle East. What is it all over there? All the wealth of the people. That doesn't happen. God says it's a land that it belongs to me. And the landlord is Almighty God, the creator of the universe. He does not say, I'm separating you from the others. He said, be with each other, work with each other, dialogue with each other. If you come to the reality, there is no such a thing as a divisions between the Moses and Muhammad or Jesus. They are all, as you probably know, all three of them are cousins with each other from the background of Abraham. Abraham had two sons that you're talking about, Ishmael and Isaac. From the Ishmael part, you have Muhammad and Al Muhammad. From the Isaac part, you have Moses and Jesus. They don't have any dispute with each other. I create the dispute. I say divide and rule. And therefore, the Zionist idea is to plunder the wealth of the world and create all kinds of hatred towards Judaism. But we know it. No, we don't fall into the trap. We don't call that the state of Judaism. We call it Zionism. And of course, a day shall come that, as my dearest brother, Rabbi Weiss, and his followers, of course, all of Notros, that they are there, we will come up to that understanding, and we will live together once more time in peace and harmony again. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you. Looking forward for the day that the unity is going to come, hopefully. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you to all three of our speakers. The program is going to continue with, we're going to show another video with the explanation on the settler. It's called The Israeli Settlements Explained. And then after that video, we will open it up for questions and answers.
This is me driving in what I think is one of the most bizarre places in the world. I just crossed over from Israel into the West Bank. If you look at a map of where I'm driving right now, you'll see a jumbled mess of Palestinian towns and villages, which are shown in green, and Israeli settlements, which are in blue. Many people think of this territory as Palestine, but of the 3 million people living out here, almost 20% of them are Jewish Israeli citizens. The Israelis living out here are called settlers. They live in the West Bank, but they're citizens of Israel. As I drive, I'm looking at effectively two different nations woven into each other through decades of conflict. I visited 15 settlements all over the West Bank, talking to people who've decided to pack up and move out into the middle of disputed land. We'll meet them in coming videos, but first I want to take a look at the maps that help explain how the West Bank got to look like this. So let's go back to 1948 when the map looked a lot different. Back then, all this land was controlled by Great Britain. And due to growing tensions between Jews and Arabs, the UN worked with Britain to split the land into two states. One for Jews, Israel, and another one for Arabs, Palestine. The Jews in the region accepted this plan and declared independence of the state of Israel. But the Arab states in the region saw this plan as just more European colonialism. They didn't accept the plan and instead declared war on Israel. Israel won the war, pushing well past the borders of the UN plan. During the peace negotiations, a ceasefire line was drawn in green ink. It became known as the Green Line. It wasn't necessarily a border, it was just a ceasefire line, with this being the state of Israel, and this section being controlled by Jordan, who had taken control of it during the war. The Jordanians named this newly seized land the West Bank because it was west of the Jordan River. The fragile ceasefire remained until 1967, when Israel fought another war with its Arab neighbors. Israel wasn't looking to take over land in this war, but in just 6 days of fighting, it blew past the Green Line and seized a whole swath of land, including the entire West Bank. Suddenly, Israel had a decision to make. Do they make the West Bank a part of Israel and give the 1.1 million Arabs living there Israeli citizenship and voting rights? Do they give the land back to their enemy Jordan? Or else do they let the people create their own Palestinian state? This became a major debate in Israeli politics. Many Israelis saw this war they just won as not just a military victory, but a religious sign that the Jews were meant to return to the place where a huge amount of Jewish history happened. The hills of the ancient Judea and Samaria, which is basically the entire West Bank. So while the government was debating what to do, Israeli civilians began moving into the West Bank without any permission from the government. They just started setting up homes, establishing a Jewish presence in this region. Suddenly, any debate about what to do with the West Bank had to take into account the growing number of Israeli civilians that were living there. But the rest of the world did not approve of this. As the settler presence grew, the UN issued a resolution saying that the settlements had no legal validity and that they constitute a serious obstruction to achieving a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East. They were basically saying that this settler activity was totally illegal. Two different narratives emerged here. One said that Jewish civilians were moving on to mostly empty plots of land that they had captured in a war, and that had deep historical and spiritual significance to them. The other side, which is the side that most of the world took, said that these settlers were colonizing land to expand their nation. In spite of international condemnation, the number of settlers in the West Bank grew. Over the next few decades, more and more factions of the Israeli government began to support the settler movement, allocating public resources and granting permits for building. The Israeli Housing Ministry and military began developing plans on how to develop the West Bank. They built roads throughout the entire region, allowing easy access between the settlements and mainland Israel. More and more building permits were given out, and planned communities began popping up all over the West Bank. The settlements slowly shifted from a fringe group of motivated civilians to an institutionalized part of Israeli society, totally supported by the state. Here are the Palestinian towns in the West Bank. Watch how the settlements weave throughout these Palestinian towns. Palestinians didn't like this encroachment. They began protesting, often with extreme violence. Between the violence and the condemnations from the international community of the settlements, the situation became unsustainable. So, in the mid-1990s, American President Bill Clinton, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat signed the Oslo Accords, agreements that established a Palestinian government and split the West Bank into 3 sections. Area A gave Palestinians total control over security and government. This makes up about 18% of the West Bank, but most of the Palestinian population centers are here. This was a big deal because it gave Palestinians self-rule for the first time. Area B was designated for Palestinian government control while retaining Israeli security control, meaning the Israeli military remains very present there. Area B is about 22% of the West Bank. Area C remained completely under the Israeli military and government control. This is where all the settlements are, in Area C, and it's about 60% of the West Bank. So this is basically how we ended up with this mess of a map. Israelis can come and go from mainland Israel through really nice roads that go straight to the settlements. They call these roads flyovers because they bypass Palestinian villages and give easy access from one settlement to the other. But not every settlement has one of these flyover roads. Palestinians can drive on almost all the roads in the West Bank, but their movement is often more difficult, more restricted. They have to stop at checkpoints and get their car inspected sometimes. Sometimes it makes for some really long lines. But certainly one of the most difficult aspects of this carved-up land situation is how it hinders Palestinians from being able to build an economy. Area C, which is under Israeli control, contains the majority of the West Bank's agricultural land, as well as the water and mineral resources. Palestinian companies are severely restricted in accessing these resources, which takes a huge hit on their economy. So with these 3 sections agreed upon by both sides, the settlements continued to grow in Area C. But in 2005, something happened that would ignite even more passion for the settler movement in Israel. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon decided to remove 8,500 settlers from the Gaza Strip, which was another disputed area where there was a lot of settlements. Seeing Israelis forcibly evicted, their homes demolished, left a huge mark on the country, especially the settlers. They immediately redoubled their effort to settle the West Bank, and the numbers continued to grow. Most people who think about a resolution to this conflict propose a 2-state solution, meaning giving the Palestinians a state somewhere in this West Bank region. But if you look at this map, you can start to see that it's getting harder and harder to do that. The settlers living in the West Bank are not living in tents or caravans. They're living in developed communities with schools and hospitals and even a university. It's not going to be that easy to uproot these communities. In the next video, I'll go inside the settlements and talk to the people who are living there.
Jewish people have come home. That's not going to change.
Who are these nutcases who are moving out of their own will into this battle zone? They fail to realize the lifestyle that we actually have here.
I don't consider myself a settler, maybe, but I know other people do just because I cross a certain line and I go through a certain post.
Well, so this is the portion where we will open up for questions and answers. There's a few questions that I was able to gather. So, and one of these, a couple of these questions is directed towards Rabbi Weiss. And the one question is, someone asked, what is universal Zionism as spoken of in Isaiah? And how is that different than the Zionism that you spoke of today?
There is no connection, again, with the help of the Almighty, there's no connection whatsoever with when God commanded us to go up to the Holy Land after we left Egypt. In fact, as again, people who study the scriptures, they'll see that the Jewish people, there were some who did not want to go up, and we were punished to be 40 years in the wilderness. The Jews did only what the will of the Almighty was. And when they went up, it was only to establish, to serve God, and whoever wanted were able to remain if they did not, again, worship idols. And the concept was the will of the Almighty. And that ended clearly with the destruction of the temple. We were told that we are forbidden, under all circumstances, we are forbidden to reestablish, to make any type of Jewish sovereignty. That concept of going into the Holy Land was all the concept of spirituality to serve God. Again, nothing to do with the establishment of some type of like an Israeli state. And again, it was the command of God, as other people were able to live together over there without being thrown out, and it ended totally. It's not the Jewish religion. If they want to, Zionism, the word is not exactly what it's referred to over there. Zion is what is referred to as this city of David, basically, at that time, which again was there was the temple, there was a place to serve God, with all humanity were able to go up and serve God over there. But once that ended 2,000 years ago, we as Jewish people continue to serve God according to the laws of the Torah. But the establishment of Zionism is it totally contradicts this concept of what a Jew is to do. We are not allowed to have a state. You can delve into the again, the studying of the scriptures to understand what was over there. As I said, it was all humanity they weren't to be killed out and stuff like that, or thrown out. But whatever it may be, because the whole concept of the Jewish religion is a study in itself. But the establishment of Zionism is a criminal endeavor that has totally nothing to do with Judaism. They call themselves in the name Israel. They use the Star of David. They use all the strappings, the facade of Judaism, but it's totally stealing. It's hijacking. It's stealing the identity of another people. So it's nothing to get into a discussion of whether what we did as Jews at that time, really, although like I say, it wasn't a criminal thing, but this concept has nothing with our religion. And any person who will go to the very religious communities in Mea She'arim, in Jerusalem, as I've mentioned, or you go to the very religious communities around the world, you will find it's unacceptable Zionism. Somebody wants to understand theology, we'll explain the difference, what was over there, but it has nothing to do with Zionism. Zionism as a whole, as I mentioned, was by Theodor Herzl, people who denied the existence of God, people who denied, and they're only using the religion to intimidate other people and to create and to make this seem to be a religious conflict, and therefore people are fearful of getting involved. They don't want to be stamped anti-Semitic, as they use the Holocaust and so forth. The Holocaust, by the way, my grandparents died in Auschwitz, were killed in Auschwitz, and all our communities, the very religious communities, we're almost entirely people who are survivors. I mean, children and grandchildren of survivors of the Holocaust. We refuse to accept that this gives us permission, as I don't know, as you refer to yourself, thank you very much for the kind words, Ms. Nahidan. I'm sorry, I apologize. Sheikh, or what? I apologize. I don't know how to refer to your title, but as you mentioned, this has nothing to do with this religious conflict. We flourished, and we're thankful for the Muslim and Arab communities. This is entirely an ersatz Judaism. So again, I'm a little reluctant to get into the theology of our religion, but again, that's what one thing is clear. Anybody who wanted to remain at that time were able to remain in the Holy Land as long as they didn't worship idols, and has nothing to. And just putting that aside, this Zionism is not Judaism. It's the cause of bloodshed. It's a political, material movement that should not in any manner be confused with the religion Judaism, and it's not a religious conflict. It should not be used as a tool to oppress the Palestinian people. Let's separate the two.
All right, Rabbi, while we still have you, we have another question. This question is, who are and who isn't, who are and who are not Semitic people?
Well, that's another point. Like I said, I didn't want to, that's like, and I call it a little bit semantics, because the Zionists keep on saying anti-Semitism. They say, oh, we're also Semites, which is 100% true. Semite means Shem, from the children of Shem, son of Noah. So the people of Palestine, the people of Abraham, they're all Semites, really. But they like this, when people broach that issue that they're also Semites, so people start, their eyes get glazed over, because they know that, oh, you're an anti-Semite is at the end of the day given to people who oppress the Jewish people. So I don't want to get into that, because it's true that they are also Semites. But whatever it is, let's just say that anti-Semitism, let's give them that the Zionist, that anti-Semite and means anti-Jewish, right? And that the Semite belongs to the Jewish people. Let's just say that. But they're wrong. The anti-Semites are the Zionists, who we have to keep on remembering. We lived together, Jews and Muslims, Jews and Arabs, for hundreds and hundreds of years. We lived in every Arab and Muslim land. We played together. We babysat each other's children, our most precious objects. When Jews went to synagogue, how would you give your child to your most precious object to you? Because it was a given. It's like, you understand, you go to your neighbor and you don't ask him, excuse me, are you Christian? You have a neighbor and you ask him a favor, you live together in peace. We always lived together. It was never a question of what the religion is. It was a question of is a person a decent person or not. Now the Zionism comes and they keep on saying, oh, the reason why the Palestinians don't want me to take over their house that they lived in for 1,000 years is because they hate the Jews. I mean, how ridiculous, how revolting is that claim? So this is something that we have to really, really not let the Zionists use these semantics and these different issues of anti-Semitism, what that it means, using the concept of anti-Semitism to intimidate that people should be silenced from objecting to what's happening to the Palestinian people. The proof is in the history, how we live together with distinctly different religion. We serve God together, and as I say, we can't describe our gratefulness for the Muslim countries who gave us a home and embraced us when we were being murdered. So we live together. Zionism comes along and takes over a land, a mere 70-odd years or something, takes over a land and claims they waive the Bible as a deed to the land. How that's corrupt, that's a nakba, that's unacceptable, that's tragic, and they have no right to use the Jewish identity or to speak anti-Semitism. We, the ones who suffered the most. My grandparents and the majority of my relatives died in Auschwitz, as all our communities here in Williamsburg and in the other, and we all stand in one voice and say, no, that does not give the right to occupy Palestine or any part of the world, and certainly not Palestine and the Palestinian people. These people should be given back their homes, their respect, their lives. It's unacceptable. God will help. It will happen soon.
I believe that, thank you, Rabbi. I believe this question is directed toward Reverend Hagler. And it says, as anti-Zionist Christians, how do we explain why in the Old Testament, God tells children of Israel to kill everyone in towns that they encounter? I don't know the basis for that, but that's what the question was put. put forth?
There are some texts that exist in that way, but you got to look at the whole context of the text. One thing that is important is that to look at the sort of the various historical stages. One historical stage is enslavement coming out of Egypt. One historical stage is in Babylon, Assyria, coming out of exile. And one stage is entering the land. At no point when you read the entire biblical narrative is the land basically separate from other people. There's always other people in the land. That's why they're Canaanites. That's why there's the whole list of Jebusites, and there's Canaanites. There's everybody that's listed there, and that exists historically and continually. And that's a part of our misreading of the record, of the biblical record, and also our misunderstanding, because when we look at the real biblical record, it has to do with liberation. It has to do with coming out of oppression. It has to do with coming out of enslavement in Egypt or exile in Babylon. It has in Assyria. It has to do with all of those types of things. And so, in a sense, it is a record of a people trying to find a place with God, a place of security and comfort with God. And of course, we face the human frailty even in all of our texts sometimes. And the human frailty is that people wrestle with, well, who am I in relationship with God? Who am I in terms of my existence? What is the meaning? What is the purpose? All of those types of things continually come through our texts as well. That's the way I see it. Let me go back to the little piece of documentary, because there's a couple of things that I had some problems with. One is that they talked about the 67 war as basically the IDF and the Zionists not intending to take territory. No, they were intending to take territory in the 1967 war. That's why there was that picture of Moshe Dayan walking through Jerusalem, claiming it as a part of the new state of Israel, that type of stuff. So it was a part of the parcel and the plan in terms of seizing territory and seizing land. So it wasn't benevolent. It wasn't an accident that it happened. It came out of military and political design that it happened. And it comes about as a provocation to the countries around it by really this Zionist state of Israel to provoke the countries into war in an effort to try to throw and create justification for seizing territory and more land. I'll give you a prime example, because I started all this stuff as a biblical archaeologist. One of the archaeologists that I was familiar with was a general in the Israeli army, and that was Yigal Yadin. And Yigal Yadin mobilized the entire military just before the 67 war to do it really wasn't an excavation, it was a political military stunt to unveil all of the keys that were left behind in the Bar Kokhba rebellion. And to assemble those keys as an emotional understanding that we have returned to the land. And so he used the academics of archaeology and the military to make that claim and to try to create that justification for taking over the land. So 67 war really had to do with a land grab. And 48 had to do with the land grab. But I think that, we got to, let me say this, because I think that in churches, we have a responsibility, and that is to tell our folks the truth and not to create the mythology and not to buy into the narrative of the dominant oppressive culture, but to really, in a sense, be serious about the text that we are reading, the text that we are teaching on, to really understand the context of the text. In other words, those who are teachers and preachers got to stop being lazy and got to really, in a sense, engage in the kind of scholarships that bring a different kind of illumination.
May I add just first of all, thank you. We're talking about the 67 war. I almost missed up on also they not only that, but the settlements it wasn't so complacent, so innocent that some people went. I mean, it's not that it's innocent, but that some citizens went there. These were strategically placed communities that they wanted to be out the PowerPoints on the hills and on the, that to take up the strategic places all around, that they should be able to control the area. That's first of all. And again, I have to stress, the Zionists constantly wants to confuse the religion together with their takeover, with their land grab. So, and why do they do this? I mean, it's so revolting to a religious Jew, because if you will follow what they've done from day one, and there's a lot, again, I urge people to go to NKUSA, our site, or others from the Eidah Haredis, the God-fearing community. As I say, there's a rabbinate there. You will see that every single Jewish law they breach, the Sabbath, with the most blatant, the concept that says that we're not allowed to do work on Sabbath. They have the buses, everything going, the stores open. It used to be, before the Zionist state came along, they used to blow a horn. There was or a siren before, like a few hours before Sabbath, and the rabbis would walk around and all the stores in the Jewish communities would close. Today it's a joke. It's one of the 10 commandments that, and they're all, because that's not a Jewish state. They dig up graves for archaeological purposes to make a highway. I went to Egypt. They made a ring road around Cairo because in order that they should not disturb they made a ring road. There shouldn't be because of the traffic. Yet it had to cross through a Jewish cemetery. So they made it. It cost them millions of dollars on poles. They made it that it should not disturb the Jewish cemetery. The Zionists made Kavush, an extension of Kavush 6, part of their highway, and they just rammed through the cemetery because they have no respect for the dead, which is considered holy by us. I could go on. They on and on with every law they breach. They have no respect. It's not a Jewish state. They have no respect for the Jewish religion. It's just a farce. It's a simple tool for them to be able to occupy and intimidate, and to be able to, that the human rights activists around the world should be silenced because they don't want to get labeled anti-Semitic. That is why they say that it's a Jewish state, and they keep on insisting it's a Jewish state, that it should get the connotations that if you speak against them, you're attacking the religion. And remember what with Hitler and all that, that's all they're doing. They use Hitler, and they use the Holocaust also for that purpose. That what our blood, what we died, they use for that purpose. We talk about keys. We went to visit the camps, the refugee camps. We went Sabra Shelter, Baba Barajna in Lebanon, and they presented me with the key that they carry along from their homes, and I proudly carry it. This is from the Palestinian homes that they had the keys to the homes, and we as Jews say you're not allowed to steal. That is what it says in our Torah, in our about that. You're not allowed to steal. It's Palestinian land. They have no right to take the homes away. God told us we should not steal. Don't use the history of the Jewish religion or whatever it was. It's a theological, it's a issue, it's a study. You want to study that part of religion? Well, gladly we can talk about that. But it has nothing to do with this Zionist criminal activity of occupying the land and using a false deed to the land called the Bible. This is not acceptable.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. There's another question, I believe that's directed towards Imam Nidian. This question is about the way that the Zionists, is it true, according to the question, is it true that the Zionists are manipulating the Muslim world between the Sunni and the Shiite? And how is that benefiting them in this political climate?
Beautiful. The concept of divide and rule is the rule of the Zionism anyway. And therefore, with the same idea that they create Zionism with the name of Judaism, at the same time, they created ISIS with the name of Islam, so-called Islamic State, that they were a bunch of criminals and terrorists, that it was established by, I guess, unfortunately, Obama and Clinton. And with the same idea that the Crusaders, that they were a bunch of, that they were created with the name of Christianity. Unfortunately, that's what they want to do, to create divisions. And they make so-called ISIS against Shi'i. They call him Sunni. It had nothing to do with the Sunni tradition of Prophet Muhammad. They were terrorists. Where did they get all of these weapons? Brother Luqman, all I can tell you, if it is between me and my brother Rabbi Weiss and my dearest brother Reverend Hagler, if we sit together, we are talking about an Abrahamic faith. We have no dispute whatsoever. Whatever Weiss says, whatever my brother Hagler says, this is something that it is in our Quran, in our book. We believe in that one. We don't have any problem with each other. The problem is the one that they want to divide us from each other. That they want to say, no, you are the enemy of Judaism. No, how could I be the enemy of Judaism? How could I? Moses is my prophet. At the same time, as I mentioned it to you, in the Holy Quran calls it Musa Kalimullah, the spokesman of. How could the word of God be coming to Musa and becomes wrong? This is impossible. Isa Ruh, the Jesus is called the Spirit of. How could the Spirit of God be wrong? God forbid. Now, three of us, if we sit together, and if we're talking about not the so-called Muslims and Christianity and Judaism, but talk about Moses and Jesus and Muhammad, there is no dispute whatsoever. The creation of the Sunni Shi'i is a creation of Zionism in order to divide them. That's all I can say.
Well, Reverend Hagler, there's another one I believe is directed to you, and the question is, why is the Palestinian Christian community never mentioned in the context of these talks?
Well, I mean, because they're really not looking at religion, they're looking at the political identification. So a Palestinian Christian is the same thing as a Palestinian, and that means the same thing as a Palestinian Muslim, right? So nobody looks at the sort of the different the differences that exist. It's just like what we're struggling with in all over the world is that somehow people want to either deny the existence or out of fear that people will identify. I'll tell you a couple stories. One was a young man years ago of Puerto Rican background who had grown up on the streets, and the FBI came and tried to arrest him to make him testify before a grand jury on his friends that he grew up with about who was in the Puerto Rican independence movement. And he came to see me, and I asked him what church he went to, and he went to a Pentecostal church. So we went to New York and to Harlem at La Synagoga, and we met with the pastor, and the pastor remembered the young man very well. And we told the pastor what was going on, and the pastor held a service. And the service, as the pastor stood up, the pastor said, this young man, he grew up among us, and he's going to do like Jesus did. He's not going to say a mumbling word before Caesar. And the whole crowd went, hallelujah, amen. And we knew the FBI was in the room. They never bothered that young man again because they did not want to wake up that sleeping giant that is the Pentecostal church. Because the Pentecostal church is generally a apolitical church, apolitical movement. So when they saw that taking place in Harlem at La Synagoga, FBI said, leave him alone, go after somebody else. And what I'm getting at is that people try to pick us off and try to pick us off in our so-called weakness very often. And they change the narrative. And just think about understanding what's going on in Palestine is just take a look at the history of this country. You know, folks invaded in the name of Christianity. In the name of Christianity, they were not Christian. And they took the lands of indigenous people and turned around and created a narrative that the indigenous people were attacking them so that they could kill more indigenous people, when it was the other way around, is that the settlers were taking scalps and they were raping and they were taking lands and they were conquering people. But that narrative doesn't work, so they have to switch the narrative around and basically justify the takeover of land and peoples and their conquest. And that not only happens here, but that happens all around the world in terms of who creates the narrative, who maintains it, and what is it in it that is true. And we need to be able to discern the truth and the falsehood in it.
Wow. I think we got like maybe time for two more questions.
Brother Luqman, do I have a time to go ahead and explain something?
Yes, sir.
Yes, with your permission. Of course, as you know, this system of ISIS was created against the so-called Shiis. And then at the same time, the group of Shiis and Sunnis, they got together in Iraq with the name of course, Hashd al-Sha'bi and Revolutionary Guard. And their leader was two people, which is Qasem Soleimani and Mehdi Mohandes. And both of them, they fought and finished up almost this ISIS idea from Iraq and Syria. And of course, it was never it came to Iran anyway. They finished them up. Both of these people, that they were the commander of the army against ISIS. If US was against the ISIS, why did he bomb and kill both of them on January 3rd, 2020 in Baghdad? This question is something that we have to think about, that the concept is not really what the media is introducing, but rather than what's the reality, divide and rule is the issues. No, we are the people of the earth. I am 100%, I have to be the follower of Moses in order to be a Muslim. 100% we have to be a follower of Jesus in order to be Muslim and Muhammad. All of them, as it says, Quran very clearly says, La nufarriqu bayna ahadin. There is no dispute whatsoever between neither one of them. But they want to create that dispute in order to make us divide and rule. God bless you.
May I just ask?
Yes, sir. Go. Yeah, this open to you.
And they speak about the divide and conquer. This is clear. I personally, with my colleagues, went to visit many, thank God, many of the Muslim and Arab lands. And amongst them, we were in whether Shia on the Shia rule or on the Sunni rule. So we were in every single country. The people on the street and the leadership, the religious leadership, everybody was the most welcoming and friendly. I mean, it just came from the heart. We went on the street for weeks. We walked here, there, and everybody. Entirely, everybody showed their friendship. I was in Yemen. I was in whether it was in Jordan or it was in Egypt, and go on in Lebanon. And then we were many times, thank God, in Iran, and we were visited. And over there, first of all, there's again the Mordechai and Esther, our prophets, Jewish prophets. You have to see with what respect Daniel. You have to see with what respect they're held, how they keep the beautiful, how the buildings that they're resting in, and on. So I could tell you, there's really it's no difference what part of the Islamic people, whether it's any part, there is no issue of a religious conflict. I mean, this is a fact on the ground. In fact, I'll just state many European countries, when you go, they are afraid to put the names of synagogues. Till today, they call them, they refer to them by the address 86. When I went to many different European countries, while you will go to Iran, you go to in the center streets over there, they have Jewish synagogues with the names in Hebrew outside. Not, by the way, we don't use the Ivrit, that's the Israeli Hebrew, because they detested God and the religion. They even changed the Lashon Kodesh, the old Hebrew, into a new language that we do not use, we do not speak. That's an aside. Because why did they have to change the language that we're using for thousands of years that God gives? Because they made Ivrit, modern Hebrew. That's just an aside. But the synagogues have names over there, and it's on the building. So if they would hate the Jews, there's not even guards. There's no guards standing out front. It's all because there's no issue of a religious conflict. This is a man-created catastrophe, a Nakba. And I just like to say that people may be a little quizzical. They would think, how come you see the settlers that you showed in the videos, you see religious people there in the settlers? And the answer is because they use gullible, idealists from college universities. They don't, mostly as a general rule, they don't come from the really religious families. These don't become the settlers. The settlers are people who say, oh yeah, you're telling us that God said that we should take back the land, even though they're going to cause mayhem. They're going to cause destruction for the Palestinian people, and they put their children in danger. They'll go to outposts on this. How dare they even take their children, which puts them in danger. Not it's condoning bloodshed, but they're putting their children in danger, and they'll traipse around on these outposts. What gives them the right? The Jewish religion doesn't give a person a right to put themselves in a dangerous position. For what? For a piece of land? A person should die for that? It's totally, what they're doing is something that's child endangerment. It's all wrong, and it's against the Jewish religion. Like I say, it's against the Jewish religion to occupy. But these people are idealists, and they fell into the trap of Zionism, because the Zionists use that religion and they fiddle with it, and they use the people remembering the Holocaust, and they say, oh, the Muslims want to kill you, the world wants to kill you. They use a fear-mongering and this concept and ideology and falsifying the Jewish religion to get these college students or whatever to become settlers and stand over there. It's just a part of the tragedy of this Zionism, this political movement that is not Judaism. We have to educate the world. God help it should end. Peace.
God bless.
Well, I think we're coming to that time. We're at that time. One more question. Okay, my producer said one more question. All right, we have a whole bunch of them, but let me go with this question here. I think let me see. Okay, there's one question that I see is, could each of the guests speak about the role of the United States in this, and what would be the future? What would be the future in the Middle East if Israel is allowed to continue with its policies? And that's directed to all three.
Well, I make it short.
Yes.
My Quran says, the land belongs to me and I will protect it and clean it up. Therefore, the Zionists might say, no, the land is mine and I want it the way that I want, bomb everywhere and destroy everything and whatever that I want to. Well, I believe the power of God is above the power of anybody, anything. So it will not happen, period. That's my views.
Oh, thank you. Reverend Hagler?
From a theological point of view, God always stands against empires, because empires are a creation of human beings out of their own ego and out of their own pride, where they attempt to supplant God with their own selves. And so that's what we're struggling with, whether you're talking about the empire of Russia or the empire of the United States, or whatever empire you're talking about. Again, it is built upon an idea of greed and an idea of really using human beings as a commodity, rather than with the sacredness that God has endowed in every single human creature. And so therefore, we got to struggle against the empires, all of the empires that exist. Because if you look even at a U.S. foreign policy or U.S. domestic policy, its foreign policy, its domestic policy has all been predicated upon a white idolatrous agenda. And that's what happens in terms of empires. Empires look to their own self, or who they think they are, and basically try to project their own consciousness onto everything else. And that's what our struggle has to be against.
Thank you, Reverend. And Rabbi Weiss, you have the last word.
With the help of the Almighty, the Almighty has the last word, but I'm just going to make a comment before. I just wanted to say that in the Torah, actually, it says, God says, why are you rebelling against me? It will not be successful. The Zionists, on every step of this chain of tragedy and sorrow of their occupation, they kept on saying there was a 67 with the 56, the 48, 56, and each time said miracles. And now, first of all, miracles, people don't get killed and die from both sides. If God has miracles, it could happen like in that the walls sink. But secondly, you see that they don't have a 10-year period where they have a peace. So the occupation is unsuccessful. But even if it would be successful, we say that it would seem successful, we would oppose it fully, because God does not permit us to occupy, to kill, to steal, or to have a Jewish state, the so-called Jewish state. But you see that, as God said in the Torah, why are you rebelling, it will not be successful. We believe that this occupation as a direct rebellion against God for all the reasons what we said, that what happens to Palestinian peoples, etc., all of this, it will end. We only pray that it should be speedy and peaceful. That is our hope, and we urge people that besides that they should not be intimidated, that they should be standing up and speaking up for the Palestinian people, because we have to stand up for what's right. We should also be praying to God that he should bring a speedy and peaceful end of this occupation, which will happen. That's a certainty. And what I want to say about the Jews are required, as I said, as in our sojourning and throughout the world in diaspora for these 2,000 years, we are commanded to pray for the well-being of every country where we reside, well-being of all the people of the world. But we have to pray and be respectful. That's why when we speak to the United States government and so forth, we speak with respect and we plead with them that they're being used by this Zionist state, by the Zionist movement, that they're being fooled and they're being used to support something that is unconscionable, that's unacceptable. And so we plead with them. That's many people in the United States who really want to do what's good, and they have human rights issues, and they really would like to help. We plead with them that they should not be conned and fooled into this Zionist narrative and what they're doing. They should understand. They should open their eyes, and the intimidation, they should step aside for a second, and because a person is fearful to think, because it takes him out of his comfort zone. But they should step out and look. If you want to see what Judaism is, look at the most religious communities. Why in Williamsburg? Why in London and Stamford Hills? Why are all the very religious communities in Mea Sharm and Jews? Why, if it's such an important issue by Jews, how come the very religious are opposed to it and they're getting beaten because they are opposed to it? Why do they hold this concept of Zionism wrong if it's such a basics of Judaism? And they should step out and realize what they're doing is not only unethical and against something that's not acceptable. It's a terrible crime. It shouldn't be done. And they really have to step out, and God will help. When they open their eyes, we will be able to figure out a way, with God's help, if we're looking for the right way, to be able to bring this peaceful conclusion entirely of the occupation in its entirety, so we can once again live in peace, all humanity, and serve God as we've been doing for these in Palestine, in Jerusalem, and Al-Quds for these hundreds and hundreds of years. We can once again live in peace. God should help soon. And ultimately, we pray for the day when God will reveal his glory with his compassion, where all humanity will serve God in peace and harmony, and also end this terrible what we call magay for this this COVID and the other sicknesses. We should all be able to live healthy and serve God in prosperity.
Amen. Thank you.
And well, that concludes the question and answer part. I will, and I'd like to thank our guests for participating, and all of you who have showed up. It was very enlightening. So I'm going to pass this off to my co-moderator, Robert Doswell.
I'm speechless right now. It's just, I've seen a lot of things in the chat, powerful, enlightening. And this is you know that something good has happened when you know that we've been here for 2 hours and it feels like it's been 30 minutes. And that I could go on for another hour or two just to listen to these great men talk. So we are so grateful. The church is grateful that we always able to do this teaching, and we're gonna, hopefully we continue to do it again in many formats and in different styles. And we would love to have our guest speakers to come back and speak anytime to us. And we would love to hear your word and to hear your passion, and to hear, to be soldiers, to help, to be there. So thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. And I'm speechless. I'm just blown away right now.
Yes.
So
I'll be honest with you. I'm thankful to God that you are the people of responsible, and you bring this program together. May God give you more power and ability to give light, to shed a light on the darkness that they create in our life. God bless you all.
Amen.
God bless you.
This if anyone we conclude this, and this one thing I just want to just mention briefly is that this is what they will never show us on MSNBC, CNN. This is what they will never show us. Here you have three leaders of the Abrahamic faiths, as is commonly known, and with no conflict. And what we've heard here tonight, this goes against their program, and so it's really beautiful to really be a participant in this. We have a hand raised. Mary, if you want to unmute yourself.
I think she was clapping.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. So but what we'll do is we will have God willing, we will have more of these teach-ins. This is not going to be the first one. God willing, that we will have some more. So again, I extend my not just mine, but Plymouth Church and everyone else to appreciation to all of our guests, everyone who participated here and everyone who showed up here. And may God be with us all. And okay. All right. Okay. I'm supposed. Okay, here it is. I'm new at this, y'all. So it's okay for now. What am I reading?
April 17th. Gonna make the announcement on the house.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. The next teach-in, April 17th at 4 p.m. is going to be on housing justice. All right. So so please, if you can, attend that. We are activist church, Liberation Church, and so it just makes me feel good that that I am in the presence of these great men, and so thank you all of you for attending and being a part of this, and we will, God willing, see you later on.
And thank you, Robert.
Oh my.
Thank you, Imam. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless you all, guys.
Reverend Hagler, what you up to?
We got a Santa one?
Yes.
Up to a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
We'll call you one day. We're gonna have to talk.
All right.
We got lots to talk about.
Very good.
All right.
ولجيشها المقدام صانع عودتي فهي التي صنعت لشعبي ثورة فهي التي صنعت لشعبي ثورة